Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I just want to acknowledge that we gathered together today on the lands of the Kulin people and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here in the room with us today. It is my great privilege, our great privilege, to tell stories and make work, live and play and love on unceded sovereign lands, where stories have been danced and sung and told for many, many millennia by the oldest continuing culture on earth. It is a great privilege. And I'm also super humbled to be sitting here today hosting this Q&A with the extraordinary Yve Blake. By way of a short introduction, though, I imagine a lot of you don't need one, but in case you do, a short introduction. Yve is an award-winning playwright, screenwriter and composer. Look at her shrink. Oh, God. Here it comes. She's best known for creating the musical Fangirls, which she wrote the book, lyrics and music for. Fangirls premiered in 2019, not 2020, at Queensland Theatre and Belvoir to 5-star reviews and standing room only crowds, before winning the 2019 Sydney Theatre Award for Best Mainstage Musical, the Matilda Award for Best Musical or Cabaret, and the 2020 AWGIE Award for Music Theatre. In 2021, Fangirls returned by popular demand for a second Australian tour and released a cast album via Ghostlight Records. Welcome, Yve.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
There's a really wonderful story behind the creation of this musical, and one that includes several exciting chapters. So I wonder if we could start there. How does, in your own words, these are Yve's words, by the way, how does an unproven 23-year-old come to realise this level of success with a first main stage work? Yeah? Can you take us through the journey of Fangirls from the beginning?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I feel like we need movie music.
Can I start with a question? Can I just get a show of hands who has seen Fangirls? Show of hands who hasn't seen Fangirls. Oh, that's going to make things so easy. Okay, good. Okay, cool. All right, well, I was like 21 and living in London, and I've told this story many times. I'm sorry, I've just realised 3 people in the front row have handmade shirts. Okay, that's
I did clock that.
Whoa. All right, so I was 21. And at the time, I was living in London, and there we go. I was living in London, and I was making fringe theatre and one-woman shows. And those one-woman shows involved, I had built this website where anyone around the world could come onto the website, and it encouraged you to answer a question honestly. So for my first show, the question was, tell me about someone you used to be that you feel you no longer are or recognise. And I would take the things that people would send, that people would write stuff, people would record voice notes, you could send in pictures, you could draw pictures, all kinds of things. And I would then turn them into music on my laptop. And then when I was 21, I met a 13-year-old girl who changed my life. She told me she'd met the man she was going to marry. She told me his name was Harry Styles. I laughed at her. She said, don't. I love him so much, I would slit someone's throat to be with him. I then become morbidly curious about Fangirls, and at that time, I've got a lot of internalized misogyny myself. So I'm like, oh, this would be so wacky to write about. I could write this like really violent show about how like young women taught to like attack each other for the approval of like a male idol. But then I started doing my research. And first it was on Twitter, and then it was on Tumblr, RIP Tumblr. Then it was on fanfiction sites, and I was just reading more and more this content from One Direction fans. And I started questioning my own assumptions. Like, okay, well, these people aren't all young women, and this culture isn't all entirely competitive and aggressive. There's more to it. And then right at that moment, Zayn Malik left the band One Direction. It's a global news story. The fans are rightfully upset. And I saw how they were ridiculed and mocked in mainstream news outlets. And I saw how they were sort of branded as hysterical and crazy and over the top. And yeah, from that moment on, I was like, why do we reach for those words when we're seeing like young femmes upset about something? But then, you know, if we saw a bunch of like young men upset about something in sport, I don't know that we would reach for those words. I think we'd use different words, and I knew I wanted to write something in this world, which I was obsessed with, where everything is life or death stakes all of the time, of being a teenager, but I wanted it to be about the way that we talk to young people differently when we raise them, and the lies that we specifically tell young women about themselves.
So this was like a turning point or an aha moment for you in terms of how you approach the work?
Yes, Oprah, it was an aha moment.
I'm sitting on the couch, so I just thought it was appropriate. But, okay, so, and at that stage, did you know that this was a musical?
Yeah, I did because I did, but I also had never written a musical. I didn't know how to write a musical.
Sure.
But I had become obsessed with musicals as a teenager when I was like 14. My best friend, Johnny, remember that name, we met in the school musical, my all-girls school, his all-boys school, and we were the two most pretentious kids up the back just judging everyone, it was like Les Mis, and we were like, oh, whore number 4 really isn't believing her story. So we were really pretentious, and I was like, oh my God, I would come and I'd just be reading Ibsen. I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna be a playwright. And Johnny would reference Wicked, and I was like, what's that? And he was like, a musical. And I was like, oh, musicals suck. And he's like, why? I was like, they're just bad for women. And he was like, which ones? And I hadn't seen any. I just decided that they were like traditional and dull and they weren't like cutting edge. And Johnny was so into musicals that he had this external hard drive with like 458 different pirated cast recordings. But like to get
this is being filmed, right?
I mean, sorry, his name was Fred. But like it included the German workshop cast recording of Wicked. Like Johnny had every draft of everything. Yeah. And Johnny sent me this assignment where he gave me the hard drive. I had to copy it onto my computer. And each week he'd give me another musical to listen to. And he absolutely got me because I was like, musicals suck. And then he was like, listen to In the Heights. And he was like, you know, listen to Legally Blonde, he made me listen to all of these scores that just like radicalized me because I was like, oh no, like I thought I wanted to be a playwright, but actually my dream would be to write a score, like to write lyrics and to communicate in this way. And when I found the Fangirls idea, I was like, oh, the only way I think that you could do this story justice is if like these characters can just like belt out their feelings, and I wanted the score to sound like the best pop concert you'd never been to, but it also felt like it needed to sound like the Church of Harry, like it needed to have a girls' choir energy that was like beautiful and kind of spooky, and it needed to sometimes sound like scary and like adrenal, and sometimes it needed to sound cinematic. Like I'm saying all of this, but I cannot play a musical instrument at this stage. I'm making like very bare bones demos for my one-woman shows, but I do not have the faculty to do that. So I knew that's what I wanted it to be, but I had no idea how to get there yet.
And then you're in London.
Yes.
And the band's breaking up.
The band's breaking up.
Yeah, like One Direction.
Oh, the One Direction. I was like, I'm in a band? One Direction is breaking up.
One Direction is breaking up. How is that impacting your vision for this, and what happens then?
Yeah, so, okay, and actually talking to you the other day, I remembered this detail I've totally forgotten, which is that I had this idea, and around that time, my UK agent said, oh, a producer from the BBC wants to meet with you. He wants you to pitch him a factual entertainment concept. Now, what I didn't understand is what that means is like, come in and pitch him a show where each week you're going to write a song based on a crazy news story that's factual entertainment. I thought it meant come and bring him an idea based on something that exists. So I'm like, you're going to do a 6-part series about fangirls, and it's going to be a musical. And the first draft of the plot structure was me ahead of that meeting going, basically pitching Fangirls as a 6-part mini-series. Yep. And then he was like, let's do it. So then I got really pumped, and then truly like maybe 3 weeks later, the band broke up, and then the BBC were like, oh, I don't think people will want to talk about this anymore. And I was like, I was devastated, but I also wasn't, because I was like, why were they going to trust me? Like, I have no track record. But I just kind of had the idea then, like, just tucked away inside me of like, I want to make a musical based on this, but I know no one's going to let me make it for TV, so I'd probably have to make it for stage first. But at the same time, I was like really getting burned out in London. I'd been doing these one-woman shows, and I was actually getting to a point where I was like, maybe I just don't want to write at all, like this is too hard.
Right. So you leave London.
Yes.
And come home.
Yes.
You've got the idea tucked in your back pocket, but you're sort of burnt out. And
I'm so scared of it too. I don't know how to get started on that.
Sure.
It's too hard.
So what happens then? What happens next in the plot twist?
Well, I came out to Australia because one of my shows got invited to do a season in Sydney and then a tour of regional New South Wales. And on this tour, I like look at lots of fields and I go, you know what, this is too hard. I'm just going to get a desk job. I want to have a little desk ornament and friends that, you know, plants. And that's my plan. I'm just like, this is too hard. And at that time, someone told me to apply for this grant that the Australian Theatre for Young People was doing, but it was sponsored by Rebel Wilson. And it was 10 grand, and you just had to pitch, like, you had to be under 26, and you had to pitch your dream idea. And you would have desk space for 1 year, you get $10,000, and, like, access to the rehearsal studios and stuff. So I put in this essay with, like, handmade memes in it that said, look, I have no right to do this, but I really want to make a musical. And I haven't done one, but I've done stuff like this, and this is what it would be like. And she gave me the money. Mm-hmm. So then, suddenly, I had somewhere to be from like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I had access to rehearsal studios if I wanted to just like sing my guts out and try stuff. And of course the money was really significant, but I think the key thing I reflect on now is I suddenly felt this relief of having like this sticker that says you're allowed.
Yes.
And as soon as I got that grant, I could write and it was flowing. But until then, my voice was like, oh, well, who are you to write a musical? Whereas now, because I'd convinced her that I could, then I could convince myself.
Yeah, I think that's a really important detail because, you know, and I have done that myself. I've issued myself the Sonya Suares scholarship that's really rigged because only Sonya Suares gets it every time. And I know, you know, like, and it might be ad money that, like, I got a commercial and I'm going to tuck it away in an ING account with a, like, one day I'm going to blow this against the wall on some stupid creative idea. But having that there and calling it a scholarship has been very important in my practice. So I know what you mean about that, the validation.
I mean, that's genius, because as soon as that happened, I was like, why have I spent, like, really a whole year slowly being like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. When, you know, with one email, I'm like, yes, I can. So I try now to give myself stickers and go, no, you can do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. To come back to how do we do that for ourselves when Rebel Wilson doesn't give us 10K, and maybe we answer that question. We just have an ING account, guys, and, you know, stick some money in there.
How much are they paying you?
So okay, so you did this like a last-ditch grant application. Rebel Wilson is your fairy godmother. Okay, bling. And you have this incredible year of creative flow. And then at the end of that year, you have to acquit the grant.
I have to what?
You have to acquit the grant,
or you
have to
quit the grant.
No.
Acquit the grant.
Or you have to do a donor event. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, that is what happens. Yes. So
tell us about that.
So imagine I've been at this desk for a whole year, and it was great because I should also say that at that point, I really felt a little bit like maybe I was doing a master's program or writing an extended piece of fan fiction. I didn't have high hopes for what this could become. I was like, I'm going to write what I wish could exist. But I am a 23-year-old fetus with no track record in this country. Musicals cost millions, and my perception was that they're probably largely produced by like middle-aged, straight, cis, white men who don't care about little girl shows. I don't know. So I didn't have grant plans. But it was really, I think that helped too. I just wrote kind of on my own terms. And at the end of the year, ATYP said, okay, well, we've got you, and there was a Rose Byrne scholarships. There's two of us, and they said you can each give a 20-minute speech each at this event that we'll put on for our donors, and we'll give them free wine, and it will be a like, good job donating to ATYP, you're helping. So I was like, great, I'll do that, but I need 45 minutes, and I also need you to let me do like mad tech in the venue. And they were like, huh? And my plan was, there's a captive audience, why don't I'll rope a bunch of singers together and I'll get them to sing 6 songs, my 6 favorite songs, because I may never hear them live ever again, right? Yeah. I'm never gonna have access after this, I'm not gonna have access to a theatre anymore. No one's ever gonna make this, but I could film it and it could be a calling card. And it was also this great deadline of like, okay, well now I have to really finish those 6 songs. And maybe producers who came along could see it and go, oh yeah, that Yve Blake, she's all right. So that was kind of the plan. But then that showcase ends up like totally changing my life and is why Fangirls even happened.
So talk us, like, let's go digging, because I think this is genius. It's like I love that you renegotiating the terms of this. You're like, yes, I will do it, but I will do it like this. So you get your 6 mates. and mad tech. What does that look like? And and what did you come out with?
Fair.
Yes.
Okay, I should take a few steps back. So across this year, this magical thing happened where I had been writing this show, and I'm writing the book, the music, and the lyrics. So I'm trying to think about structure, and I reach out to my old friend Johnny, who had that hard drive, and I'm like, we've seen each other maybe once a year since high school, here and there. But I'm like, yeah, I got this grant to write a musical. He's like, no way, I'm studying dramaturgy at VCA, and I'm going to specialize in musical theatre. Do you want to be a case study? And I was like, lol. I'm just your random friend trying to write a musical, but I became one of his case studies. So he helped me structure the story and refine it. And then I realized the next collaborator I was going to need was a music producer, right? Because I'm teaching myself, I should say as well, I don't play an instrument, so I taught myself to use Ableton Live on my computer. And I'd spent the year on YouTube watching sweaty teenage boys explain how to make drums like a Bieber song. Yep. And I'm trying, but I'm not gonna ever make it sound how I want it to. So I start interviewing different music producers, and I found this legend called Dave, who was like, oh, I really like the message, I'll help you. And then finally, I needed a vocal arranger. I needed someone to bring the church to the show, to make these choirs sound like real choirs. And I found this amazing arranger composer called Alice Chance, and she's legit. She gets paid proper dollar to compose for orchestras and choirs. She's proper. And she heard my terrible demos and was like, let's go. So the four of us, we always joke that we're ABBA because it's 2 boys, 2 girls. But the four of us had this deadline of the showcase coming up, and we finished these 6 songs. We roped in, there was 9 of us on stage total. So it was me, Alice, and 7 other women, and we just sang the hell out of 6 songs. And in between, I did what I guess now is an early draft of a TED talk I later gave, of me talking about, saying the stuff I said at the top of this talk about why fangirls are interesting, but also describing what I thought this show should look like on stage. And you got a smoke machine? Oh yeah. So it's they're like, oh, you'll give a talk. You just need a podium, right? And I was like, okay, well, I bought a case of beer for my friends, and he's bringing 8 mic stands, and I borrowed 8 mic stands, 8 mics. 9 mic stands, 9 mics, 9 cables. We had to get 9 music stands from a children's choir. One of my old mates from high school has become a legit lighting designer who went to NIDA, so I think he nicked a smoke machine from there. And I've totally got pictures of what it looked like on that stage. Yeah, you find the pictures, but the hustle is real, right?
Oh my God.
So this is us testing the smoke machine. And you can see this is where, it's kind of low light, but there's a row of chairs, and that's a smoke machine, and this is what it looked like in full flight. So amazing. You can imagine these people have come for just the free wine, and you'll have to go through some speeches, but it's free wine, and then they sit down, it's anyway, so yeah, we put on this showcase, and I had this real special champion at that company called Amy Maiden. She was the general manager, but she just loved new musicals, and she became a friend, and I would go to her office during the year and sing her my first demos. And she just nicked $1,000 from the budget to pay for a professional videographer to get a proper 2 camera shoot, and we took the sound, the special sound from the desk, so it wasn't all muddy. And then she so kindly took that video and emailed it to every person who she had invited, but who was I'm busy. So we're talking fancy artistic directors, people who don't have the time. Mm-hmm. And I think the email just said, you're an idiot, you should have come. And people watched it. And then what absolutely changed my life is that she sent it to fancy producers in Australia, but then they started sending it to fancy producers in the UK and the US, and then they started sending it to studios in LA. So then suddenly, 3 weeks after we've done this showcase, I'm getting emails from Hollywood studios being oh, this chick's got a Harry Styles musical, people would come to that. Not a Amazing. Harry Styles musical, I enjoy a lawsuit-free lifestyle musical inspired by the fans of One Direction.
That's amazing. And I just think that the reimagining of that event and making it work for you is just such a gift of a in this whole arc of the story, which we have not finished, and we'll continue the chapters, because I don't think actually the donors they can buy their own wine, right? They really can. And so what I think it's nice to hear is the people who come to those sort of things, because they've invested, are bloody invested, and they would be up for seeing like a pop concert and seeing what you did, like the creative exposition. But that you could think also beyond those people in the room outward, with the help of your champion, outward into the industry by having this kind of filmed calling card. So she nicked a grand. You hustled on like 600.
Yeah,
some beer.
I mean, everyone donated their time, which was beautiful, but our exchange for the actors was, we don't have a budget to pay actors, but we can give you all a copy of this footage, and then you have for your show reels footage of you singing. And a lot of actors sort of fed back that they didn't have musical theatre-ish
beautiful
material. They had like TV stuff. And look, we were in our early 20s and everyone was studenty, so it wasn't so dodgy. Now I wouldn't try that, but yeah.
No, but I think, and I think it's about age and stage and thinking, okay, how can I work generously? Yes, I don't have the money. If I had money, I would pay you, but how can I work generously? And that's a beautiful thing to offer people and for people to have, you know. Money isn't always the, you know, be all and end all. But now you're here in 2017, right? And now these offers and emails are coming in, and on the surface that may look and smell like success, right? Hollywood's calling. What can you tell us, like, from the inside, what the difference of the experience of working in a studio with your scholarship in 2016 versus like instant overnight success in 2017? What did that feel like from the inside?
You know the answer.
I do.
Was wild, right? Because imagine, I've just been so safe in this little cocoon all year, writing my little show, and then suddenly all of these producers want to hit me up for a meeting, and it was really overwhelming because I would sit down in these meetings and they would say all kinds of stuff that was discombobulating, like, oh my God, I just love it. I can just see it. It opens and the curtain rises and all the girls are just standing there with their pink guitars. And I'm just like, what show have you seen? Like, what's that? Or just people telling you what it will be because it wasn't finished. They'd seen 6 songs of like, oh, what they should do. You should put in a character that does this. And it was so overwhelming. But what also was overwhelming is that lots of different producers had different ideas of what they wanted to do with it on stage, on screen, TV, film, you name it. And then they would each tell me how they saw it. And of course, you know, they want you to choose them. So everyone's going to speak to you in emotional terms and be like, I just really care about this because when I was a child, and it was really, it was a privilege, but it's overwhelming, right? Especially then money comes through and it's like, oh, well, I'll pay you $2.50. I'll pay you $10. And I think about the year 2017, and it's like all these conversations are happening, and then what I did is I just wanted to keep writing and keep going, and it was very discombobulating. So I started doing dinner table readings at my place with my friends, and me and Johnny, my dramaturg, does anyone not know what the word dramaturg means?
Very good, yeah.
Oh my God, you're so educated. Okay, anyone watching at home, it's a German word. It basically means like story architect. So Johnny is helping me through these readings, and Dave and I are still going into the studio and making the tracks better, and Alice is still adding her work. But yeah, like half of my life was these deals. I think it was so great to have all of this interest, but also I didn't feel like I could tell any of my friends I've got all these offers, because that would feel really gloaty, right? All my friends are peers who are writing, so I didn't tell anyone. I felt so alone to have all this interest, making a decision, and I don't have anyone who knows what that's like. And I had this like amazing manager who started working with me, who like got me through it. But it was scary. Yeah, and paddling in that kind of level of debt at a young age. I do not recommend it.
Yeah. So it feels like at this stage of the story we are into before signing off a contract, and we want to go into like the contract that you did sign and the conditions that you put in. It feels like navigating 18 months. Is that right? 18 months of back and forth.
It was, yeah.
And so maybe again as well, like juxtaposing that the narrative of what it feels like, what may look like on the outwardly as incredible success, feeling maybe not as fun as when you had me, myself and I in a room with a pen and a piano and banging out tunes, and that dissonance.
Yeah, Yeah, well, because as well, imagine 2016, it's like just me and ABBA, my little band, we're having the best time. And then 2017, suddenly there's all these deals. But then also, all through 2017, I was like, well, don't worry, we'll put it on next year and this will all be over. But of course, the next year, 2018, and it didn't come out until the end of 2019. Like, things just took so long. And yeah, so I've got a slide of it actually. I didn't sign my deal for the first season, which was between Queensland and Sydney, until this is me at the launch event for Queensland Theatre, truly about to step on stage telling everyone to buy tickets, and this is me signing that contract because that's how long it took. And so this is July 2018, but like the conversation started at the start of 2017. Like it just took forever.
There was so many, a whole bunch of parties involved, and it was musical chairs about who's coming with.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, and that's the thing too, is we were very lucky that lots of different theatre companies were interested, and it was musical chairs of like, oh, well, these two are making it, and then circumstances changed, and now it was these two, and it kept on changing around. But I guess through that process, I started to get clearer and clearer about the fact that, okay, I guess at that point 24 and unproven, but I started to get really firm about what I needed to have in the contract. Because actually, if a lot of people are interested, I do have a leg to stand on. And it was really important to me not only to have approval over the director and the cast, but also the casting process. Because I was new to musicals, right? I was just writing one, but I was learning that obviously in this industry, like, there's a lot of systemic issues when it comes to casting. And eventually, when I got the deal, it gave Paige, my director, and I control over the casting, and we insisted on doing this specific kind of call out where anyone who like felt that they could play the age range of these characters could submit a 2-minute video with really clear instructions, 2 little sections of the show and a section of the song of their own. They could send in that video just on their iPhone and be considered for the auditions. But like, you can imagine, I'm an absolute no one, and me saying to these main stage companies, all right, that's how you're going to do it. And that's never how they've done things before. Like, that's also why it took time. Yeah.
But you got there and you built that into your contract, so you got to cast it the way that you wanted to, which was included this mechanism for accessibility for people who maybe don't get to step foot into those rooms, or they only have to have access to an iPhone and the information. And you also put a clause in around marketing. So I guess those two ideas is about access in terms of who gets to be represented on the stage, and then who gets to have access to the final product. Who can this show reach? Was that the thinking behind the marketing stuff?
Well, also though, if you think about it, the whole point of the show is like, why do we use words like hysterical and crazy to speak about young women? And it was really important to me. Imagine if the marketing was just not it. You know what I mean? Like if the marketing was accidentally mocking Fangirls, then that would just be diabolical. But I guess and I've continued to be quite hands-on when it comes to the marketing of this show. Like we did a tour again this year in 2021. And it was clear to me at the start of that tour that the companies coming out of COVID who were running it had like bare bones resources. Those marketing departments, I mean, the target audiences for a lot of main stage companies are like, middle-aged women. And they don't want to see TikToks, but I knew the audience that I wanted to speak to did want to see TikToks. So I had to learn how to do a TikTok. I had to learn so I spent most of this year running like the Fangirls Instagram and TikTok accounts, and I don't know. My philosophy is that with this work, the marketing is 100% an extension of like the artistic expression of it, because it is about how we speak to young people.
It is always, isn't it? Marketing is always your first conversation with your audience.
That's a very good way to put it.
Oh yeah, not bad. No, but I think about it like that too, and I think that we sometimes, it's your invitation to them to come into the space. So it has to invite, and then also the lines of access, like how can ticket prices and all of that go to that, right?
Yeah, and I think that was a big point with both of the first 2 companies who put it on, was exactly that. Like, how do we get young people who this is about and for into the space? Oh my God,
I definitely had that. I definitely had that experience, sitting at Art Centre Melbourne and looking around and going, well, "This is genius." I mean, I've been in so many conversations about how to bring young people into theatre, and here they are. How did they get here? So I think it's just worth pouring into this conversation that was through some really deliberate thinking and strategy and intent. But okay, so you've like navigated the contract. there are a couple of companies that are putting on this show, and then you get to be in a rehearsal room. Tell us about being in the rehearsal room as a composer, lyricist, librettist, and also actor in your work. How did you find that? How did you navigate it? And what did you learn?
Well, I should say, before we go to rehearsals,
Okay.
If I may, I don't want to jump over like a
Not
key
at all.
part, which I wish I knew at the start of this. So between 2016, we've got that first showcase, right? I'm just going to absolutely smash through some slides. So firstly, like, maybe I'll talk about this later. But like between the showcase, there are so many showcases that we do. So this is Sydney in 2016, and I showed you these pictures. This is a video of us. There was no rehearsal space, so this is just everyone rehearsing in an alleyway. Like, we had nothing. This person's like, what are they doing? Everyone's trying to rehearse. This is for the Sydney showcase. Then I went over to London and did a showcase because I knew of a venue over there that would give me a week of space. And I was like, well, if I go to London and do that, I can pull a team together in London, and then I can maybe I can use some overseas interest in the work to leverage some interest in Australia. So I went over and did that showcase. Then we did a second one because a venue came to that and said, oh, do one here. And we were like, okay, so that's Alice, the musical director, and this is us just doing another showcase. That one was at the South Bank Centre. Then we did a showcase at the Adelaide Cabaret Festival. These are the two of the amazing actresses just like absolutely getting their lives. But this one was like a full reading of the work in front of 700 people at the Dunstan Playhouse in Adelaide, which I really don't want to cut them off, but this is us. So this is like a whole cast of people. That's me in the middle. And so this is the reason I want to share this is like long before we got to rehearsals, there was extensive pitching and workshopping, and they're two different things, right? Like a dinner table reading with me and my mates where everyone is only being paid in wine and pasta is entirely about me hearing the work. But these were about showing the industry that this could work and that I am unproven, and in fact so is all of ABBA. Like no one on ABBA had done anything before. So it was a huge gamble to like believe in us, which is why we just kept flogging the work and getting people to like sing their guts out. And slowly but surely, artistic directors were like, yeah, okay, cool. And it helped a lot actually when Paige, the director, came on board. This is what a closed workshop looks like. So this is at Belvoir after they had signed on. This is the last one we did actually before the first rehearsals. But yeah, this is like the same thing. It's actors reading and singing around mics and stands, but this is just the Belvoir staff watching on.
Is that maybe nine workshops and developments?
So I actually I counted them up in a slide. It's something like 7, but then it's a lot of workshops. So it's like, what's this? So pink are showcases and the green are workshops. But this is the full, I can hear my manager cackling. This is the full list of every development that I did for Fangirls.
Amazing.
Across 5 years. And it says down the bottom, somewhere in here we had about 5 casual readings with friends, like dinner table ones. But it was an effort, you know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's really impressive. And the culmination of that is that you get to be in this rehearsal room at Belvoir.
Yeah.
No, I think it was a real good circle back because I think that's really important to. What was it like being? So my question was playing all those roles, wearing all of those hats at the same time in a rehearsal room. How did you navigate it, and what did you learn from it?
Do you know what's wacky woo is that I thought this would be one of the hardest bits was being in the rehearsals, right? Whereas actually everything until then was harder than I thought. Being in rehearsals, I was so profoundly supported by Paige, our director, who as soon as I met her, I got on with her and I knew she was like the right person. But she and I had this real deal where like until rehearsal started at 10, if she wanted to call me early, then I would have my writer hat. But after that, from 10 until we finished at like 5, 6, I had my actor hat. And if she needed to access me for a second, she and the assistant director, it was like very presidential. They'd come up to me and they'd be like, okay, that line doesn't work, but we're thinking this doesn't work, we're doing this, we're actually gonna put that there, this and this. And they would just go through dot points and I'd be like, yes, no, yes, yes, okay, I'm gonna have a banana, bye. And we just had this real system where, yeah, she was just really good at letting me compartmentalize. And people ask me questions all the time, like, did you ever watch her direct and go like, that's not how that should go? Like,
yes.
Did it feel weird watching actors do your thing in front of you? But we were really lucky because we cast angels who I'm obsessed with and starstruck by. So I just loved them. And I think as well, Paige had seen by then so many bad drafts of songs, like that were just not it. You know what I mean? She'd seen draft like 1 through 7. So I guess I tried to practice going in and knowing that, you know, her directing a scene is also her first draft of directing that. And, you know, it doesn't do anything for me to call it out. So I just tried to practice that and let her do her thing. And of course there was stuff like in the final production, I was like, really, that? But I just felt more amused. Like, that's great. I would never have thought of that, you know? Yeah. And on the whole, like, I'm obsessed with what she did, right? Like, it's loony, so, yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, so it kind of cut both ways. Like, she gave you space to be an actor while you were on the floor, and you gave her that space back to be a director. And then there were sort of times where you could be Madam President Writer, and then times where you got to go off and have a banana. Did you find what you learnt? Well, because I like this idea of like this band, right? Your close collaborator, ABBA band, and then you like in effect add Paige to the band, right? As the director.
Yeah, we called it PABA.
Yeah, great. So good. So, I mean, were there things that she said to you that in the moment challenged you, but the practice of having to sit with it for a hot second before you were like, absolutely not, opened up doors, you know, creatively?
Yes. So I was telling you this anecdote the other day. I love to tell it. Something that was really, this is kind of filed under like the importance of killing your darlings or the importance of collaborating and accepting that sometimes your idea isn't the best idea. Something that was brilliant about Paige is that and you should try and find collaborators who make you feel this way. Sometimes she would put forward ideas that I would immediately be like, absolutely not. So a great example is there's a song towards the end of the show called The Woods. Anyone watching at home, it's where 3 characters on stage have a big problem to deal with and they're trying to figure out how to deal with it together. And it was my favourite scene in the whole show. It was so funny. Every reading, people were roaring with laughter. And she was like, Eve, here's the thing. It's so high stakes that I think they have to sing in this moment. I was like, Paige, that's my favourite moment in the whole show. Like, we can't cut it. Like, I was pissed at her. I was like, you don't even appreciate my best stuff. And then she was like, just think about, and as I'm going off at her in that moment, I was like, what? It'd have to just be like, dun, 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 dun. And I suddenly was like, and I felt how good the idea it was. And she looked at me like, and truly, like, I think I wrote that song that afternoon. But that's the thing is Paige will often tell me things and I will stare her in the face and be like, well, that's stupid. And they'll go, no, it's not. And that's what's really good.
Yeah.
She's smarter than me.
Or at least that you have these amazing people who you've brought onto the project who get it and pull the best bits out of you, right? Yes. So to round out the story of Fangirls, because I sort of set up at the beginning about this amazing success, you've realised the work, you've taught it, it's been received so enthusiastically from peers and punters alike. Where are you now at with Fangirls in 2021 heading into 2022? Like, is there, you know, when you have this catharsis of seeing, you know, something that's been this long in the making realised, was there grief attached to, like, maybe having to let go of these characters or the story, or was it, or did you find things out actually being on stage where you're like, you know what, I like being here but not here, and yeah.
Well, it's interesting, like, rehearsing the show was heaven, because you can imagine you walk in and suddenly someone's in a wig and you're like, that's that person? It was just like every day was a treat. And I was, of course, terrified that people wouldn't like the show or would think that I was a hack. But the cast was so brilliant that I was like, even if they hate my writing, everyone's going to love James Produce. So, like, we're fine. But then when the show was on, it was a really confusing time for me because it was getting this wonderful response, which I really appreciated, and I loved that for the cast, you know, my babies. I loved that, but I was tired, and I really did not appreciate how exhausting it is to be in a musical. And it really clarified for me after doing those first 2 seasons. So it had 4.5 weeks in Brisbane, 4.5 weeks in Sydney. And after doing those seasons, I was like, I never want to do this again. It was a privilege to be on stage, but like what brings me more joy way more joy is sitting down and writing than getting in a school uniform and singing the same thing every night. And I love the actors who do that and the fact that they do that for me. But it was really confusing it was like the best of times and the worst of times. I was injured, I was tired. And afterwards, I mean, I was just so burned out, right? Because like all of this leading to like, in like September 2019. And the confusing thing too is like, I felt I had no right to admit to anyone that I was tired or sad, because shouldn't you be happy? Like,
everyone's so excited for you. They run up to you after a show and they're like, how do you feel, Yve?
And you're like, tired. My back hurts. So it's really confusing. Yeah, so I tore a disc in my back 3 weeks into a 10-week run. Yeah, and I did the rest of the 7 weeks on steroids. PSA, don't take steroids for that long. I was only supposed to take them for 5 days, which the doctor was not clear about. So I was like, just take them whenever there's pain, right? No. So then I had to, coming off steroids, so I had 3 months of just the most intense fatigue. And I guess it taught me that I can never do that again. But then it came back in 2021, post Pandora, or like after the 2020 lockdown. And then it was the best feeling ever, because suddenly I got to cast a new lead. And that was the greatest catharsis. And just watching Karis, who played Edna this year, open her mouth and sing, just like, it's the best drug I've ever tried. Like, it was amazing, like getting to watch them all. And and there's these big screens in the show, right? And I hadn't seen them when I was in it. And then I'm watching these runs. I'm like, what? Like, it was the best. And so now I've had this surreal experience where it's toured this year and all these people have gathered around it and know the words. Now albums come out. So I feel like very healed now. There's still so much more of the journey to go. Like, you know, we're trying to bring it back and we're trying to get it to London, and there's lots of interest in the TV rights, and like there's all of this stuff going on. So these characters are probably going to stay with me for years, but I'm in a good place.
That's really great. So the journey is 6-7 years in the making, most of your 20s, and it hasn't finished.
No.
So your advice might be pick an idea you can live with.
Yes, that's actually very good advice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is clever.
Good. All right. Done. Tick. So I have I feel like this story. I want to open up the floor in a bit, but I feel like the story of this musical pulls out a few broader themes that I want to dig into, and then I want to ask you a couple of practical questions, and then I want to open it up.
So thank you for being very patient.
So the first question is the question of collaborators, right? So you've talked about your band and how important they are, and to making this work, and that they're everywhere in this work. But I want to kind of dig into that thing that you talked about when you're trying to enroll programmers, producers in the process as well, right? And the popular wisdom of that is that you need to leave space for other people to invest in the piece and contribute, right? So it's made the work stronger when it's the right band of core collaborators, your creative team. But how did you negotiate trying to enlist producers or producing partners in this work who maybe had other ideas? I think you touched on this, about what it was, could be, should be, while the work was still evolving, yeah? And you haven't kind of landed it. Was it disorienting, or, how was that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I now know that I think the response from a lot of companies was like, wow, she comes with a posse. Like, we're used to dealing with one writer, but she's got, like, you know, this gang. And they weren't used to that. But I think in order for me to have as fully formed the pitch, like to have formed the pitch materials I gave to them, I needed that muscle power. So there's no other way I could have done it. And yeah, it did feel like negotiating with companies was me just like insisting on one version of reality, and then be like, we don't do that. And I was like, well, so yeah.
Yeah, and when we were chatting the other day, one of the things that you told me that I thought was really valuable was, even while you're sort of keeping a very true line about what the work is, while it's in motion and while you're trying to also land it on a stage somewhere, maintaining a sense of openness to, okay, so the note that's coming is this, like what you need as a character.
What's the note behind the note?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So for example, someone said to me, what your show's missing is like a Simon Cowell character. Like, you have to represent the evil that is being like pushed onto these young women, and you have to personify them. And I understood that idea, but it came from someone who was a middle-aged man, and I was like, okay, so maybe what we're getting at is that he needs more ways in, like for him to, maybe that's what that means, or maybe he doesn't understand enough about like the experience that the girls are having, and like it's a question of accessibility, so you have to figure out what's underneath it, maybe.
What's underneath the note? I like that. I think another way I've heard that said is, sometimes the note can be right, but the solution may not be. So when
That's smart.
Yeah, like so the solution of the Simon Cowell thing is the red herring, but the note underneath it is I've not located this character yet.
That's a smart way to look at it. That's really smart.
Even earlier in your narrative, you talked about burnout. Yeah. And like this is a big theme in our sector, and one that in my conversations with artists over the past 16 months during Pandora's reign, it's only been heightened by the precarity that we've all been facing. Would you be happy to talk a little about your experience of burnout and what you think brought it on and how you navigated that?
Yeah. Well, whenever I get burnt out, which is frequently, no, but whenever it's happened, I found what's really important is to unplug, get off socials, delete them off your phone. Like for me, I bought this little Nokia brick phone, and only my parents have that number. And my manager for total emergencies only. Hope he's listening. No, no. But I would take that to a cafe, and I would go right with that phone and leave my smartphone at home, and just like really put boundaries around your time. I found that's really important. I think I spent a lot of my early 20s just really hoping that everyone would think that I was successful and constantly making things and constantly doing things, so that maybe I'd like give myself value. I was really tough on myself, but you can't hate yourself into someone that you're gonna like. Like it doesn't work that way. And I think I think a lot of artists can relate to that though, is like you hustle yourself into opportunities and you go, oh well, the hustle works, but you've got to just be careful that hustle isn't you just grinding yourself to the bone. Because like I didn't sleep for a lot of my 20s, but now, especially after the steroid episode, I'm like, sleep is very important.
And yeah, non-negotiable. I think that idea that the separation of you are not your work. You are distinct from your practice, and you can put down your pen or your phone.
Yeah, you need hobbies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, I didn't know about hobbies until last year. I started making mashups on the down low, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This has nothing to do with...
I had a very similar thing in my 20s, and I think because we use it linguistically, we often, if you're creative, you talk about I am an actor. I am, not acting is something I do. And so the switch off from that is hard, and the feeling of that the pursuit of your. I was kind of taught, or the way that the industry was talked about was like a capital T, capital I, the industry, comma, darling, and the idea about that was a little bit like you work your ass off, like fame or something, and then the skill tester claw will come and pick you up and plonk you into a main stage. And I think that what's been really demystified through the narrative is it doesn't work like that, but also the industry is like a bunch of humans. It's like all industries are a bunch of humans. Like we make industries, and so it doesn't exist in one shape, and also it is work. So as joyous as it can, like in order to sustain the joy, you have to have. My hobby became my work, and then I worked my ass off, and it was like a long extended film of like Run Lola Run that went on for like, I don't know, it's still going, but I had to learn to do this too, and I think it's really helpful to hear people who have succeeded also talk about the flip side and the cost and that sort of thing. Mentors and mentorships was my other big theme. Like you talked about champion, Amy, as your champion. Yes. What does the word mentor mean to you? You must mentor now. It happens in like 8 minutes. You a success, and people are like, mentor me.
I'm like, me, I'm 12. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
She was incredible. I think what Amy confirmed for me is like everything is so much more fun if whenever you go through a door you hold it open for people behind you. So she was just so relentless. She would email people all the time, really fancy people, and say, can you please care about this? And she would just send them snippets, because she just knew like an informal email that just goes, you're gonna like this. And she would find, if we didn't know someone fancy, she'd find someone who did know them, and she'd figure out how to like trade the favor up. And she, she's still a great friend of mine, and she just did it because she cared about it. And now I've been able to repay that favor, because for 2 seconds, like, some people in theatre listen to me. So, you know, there's a few musicals I found recently that are being developed in Australia that I'm obsessed with, and it's joyful to email an artistic director and go, "Oi, you, listen to this, silly girl." Like, it's really good. So I just would encourage that, you know, for emerging artists. It's more fun if you're everyone's hype girl. It's no fun if you compete and, you know, if you have this scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
No, and that was the other language that was always put around. When I trained, was in music theatre, which was kind of weird because I was known as the girl who does musicals, who hates musicals. But I was like, you know, like Johnny would argue, some musicals, I don't like some musicals, but I like good musicals. And basically that's, yeah. And we were taught about this like idea of triple threat, you know, like actor, you know, like that. What does that even mean? I always found like that's such a weird idea. Like, first of all, like, who are we threatening to? and then why is it only on these 3 particular axes? And like, I do understand, but like, it's reductive, right? It reduces you to like whether or not you can tap out you can do a tippity tap, or I feel like I have other skills. I have many things, and actually we don't make art by like battling each other in a kind of weird battle royale. We are like collaborators, and that's how we make work together. Yeah.
Sorry, just speaking of collaborators.
Yes.
Can I please gas up my collaborators?
Yes, let's talk about them.
So I have something that I really want to show you so you can understand how important they are.
Yes.
Because a fear that I always have is that people think Fangirls is like the Yve Blake show and just came out of my butt alone. But that's not true. Like, I had these legends. And so what I would love to share with you all is, like, for example, how one of the songs evolved thanks to my collaborators.
That was so good. That's my practical question. How do you start writing a song? Over to you.
Sisters. Okay. So, like, this is in 2016. This is me mucking around on this laptop, and I don't have a MIDI keyboard at this stage. I can't play the piano, so I can play this. So I'm messing around my QWERTY keyboard, and I'm pressing buttons to try to find chords I use Ableton Live, so it's like a version of GarageBand. It's different kind of software. And I have picked a plastic, like, computer choir, and I'm pressing different buttons to figure out chords that feel like this song I want to write about all of these fans that worship Harry. So this is a snippet of my first sketch. This has got a little blast it. So this is me going, oh my god, this is cool. It's becoming like beautiful. So I don't have words yet. I'm just like, this is the vibe. Vibes, right? So I make this, and I turn it into a loop, and I sit on the back of the bus, and I'm just like playing this, and I think of it, and then this is me the first time I tried adding lyrics, and the section that goes, you make me feel different, you make me feel real, this love has aged me, you make me feel all the feels, all in my head. In your eyes, I'm someone I wanna be. So that's like 23-year-old Yve, just like vibing out. Then I meet Alice, and this is like a month later. So Alice is the vocal arranger, and I just picture this. You're in a cafe, you open the email, and you're like, okay, I've had one meeting with this girl. She seems cool. I've sent her the demo, and this is what she adds to that section. Oh, I'll have to sing the top line because I don't know that it's on it. You make me feel different. You make me feel real. This love has changed me. You make me feel all the feels, 'cause in your eyes I'm someone I wanna be. Isn't it insane? So, like, it's just different, right? But then it's time for us to pitch it, and we have to get it together for the showcase. So Dave comes on board, and he's like, no, we need to add an organ in this section if it's church. So then he adds that, and Alice comes into the little studio Dave rents above a tyre shop, and she sings each vocal line, and then it sounds like this. You make me feel different, you make me feel real, this love has aged me, you make me feel all the feels, 'cause in your eyes I'm someone I wanna be. Like, that is all Alice, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's just me seeing all the characters, and then finally, to bring it home, this is what it sounds like on the cast down version. And also, please note that the song has gone up 3 semitones, so I had to end up singing it like so much higher than I ever wrote it. So I did not write these notes for myself, but anyway, it becomes this. I'm caught like a fish, you're like a hook through my mouth. You make me feel different, you make me feel real. This love has changed me, you make me feel all the feels. Because insane they are, what they can do. One more example I just want to show. So sometimes I don't even start with something that formed. Like, this is my first voice demo of me. Like, I was just vibing out. I'm probably on a break at like my catering job at this point, and I'm like, oh, what about dramatic drums in this moment where she's like, I'm gonna go after him. And so this is my demo. You're gonna have to crank it, it's really soft. Right, so then this is my version, this is my attempt on my computer of that. This has something, right? And then Dave does this. Oh, I put this in. Okay, it started. Okay, and I love this. I'm like, okay, we don't have to do anything to it, it's done. And Dave does this. Right? So you can just see, like, Dave and Alice are incredible. Our stuff in there, you get the idea.
Awesome, that's awesome. I'm going to save my other practical question for the back pocket and just open up to the floor to see if anybody has a question. And am I just popping this mic out so that you can hear the questions? Is that what I'm doing?
Or should we just say them back? We'll just say them back.
Yeah, we'll just say them back.
Easy?
Who has a question for Yve?
If people are shy, I can just play more stuff.
Oh, yeah, go.
Hi, I feel like I'm one of the old people in this room. I'm a 40-year-old boy band fangirl. I've been a fan of K-Fat since 27 years.
Yes, go on.
I feel like for someone who's not a fangirl yourself, you really just absolutely resonated with me in terms of the music. I cry through the soundtrack because some of the lyrics is exactly how I feel on friends I have that are boy band fans. So how did you kind of capture that? Being someone who's not a fangirl yourself, what did you do to be able to capture that? Like, obviously you have to talk to people and you have to kind of get that information, but like I just felt like you really, really resonated the feeling that you had at the time. And me as a 13-year-old take that band to now still, it felt like it was real in every lyric that came out of that.
So the question is, how, just for cameras and posterity, how did you capture the absolute authenticity of a 13-year-old fangirl, having potentially never been one?
Firstly, thank you. That means so much to hear that it connected with you like that. Because that was my fear, right? Is what if people who have been lifelong fans are like, that's not it. So thank you. There's kind of two answers to that question. One is I have been a 13-year-old girl, so the songs in the show that are about uncertainty and wanting to feel validated and feel like you matter and you're doing things right, like all of that is just my issues. It's just, so I drew from that. But I also spent a lot of time reading tweets and fanfic and Tumblr posts, and God, there used to be this whole genre on YouTube of like tribute videos. It would be like a slideshow of pictures of Harry Styles and then a voiceover being like, you'll never know that I exist. And I was like, oh, some idea. But like, yeah, so it was a combo. But I also, what was really important to me is like to take stuff that people might laugh at and figure out how to make people take it seriously, like by having a choir sing it, but also take stuff that teenagers take really seriously and getting people to laugh at it and playing in that way. But yeah, that was my method, ripping people off.
You talked, just to riff on this, for a hot second, because I wasn't a fangirl in that way, but I was a 13-year-old girl, and I really did, I was very much in love and believed that I would marry and then, hang out on a yacht maybe with several Hollywood stars of the era. I see you when I raise you, Miss 40. You talked when we were riffing about this, maybe the centre of the work, the idea of a wound at the centre of the work, and I feel like it's not just encapsulating fangirls. That's almost an expression of adolescence, for women. And maybe you could talk to that.
Yeah, sure. One of my great friends in the UK, his name's Adam Lenson, and he has this great thing. He's like, he works with new writers of musicals, and he's like, if you're trying to figure out what you want to say in the work, you have to ask yourself, what is the wound? Like, what is the kind of painful part about it for you? And ultimately, this show is called Fangirls. It's about fangirls, but it's about the lies we tell young women and how we do we indoctrinate them into thinking that they're not enough on their own and they need external validation? And so that like sustained me through all of these years, is that I felt, and interestingly, sometimes I would get condescended to by like older male producers, and I would use that as petrol, and I'd be like, you don't know. Like, yeah, I'm going to make you see. So does that answer your question? Like, I think it was such a key motivator for me.
Yeah, but also that what's really authentic at the centre of the world is the teenage experience, and that is real and valid and authentic, and not kind of something to be sniffed at. Like, as you said at the beginning, when it's boys, it's passionate, but when it's girls, it's hysteria. And we've seen that with like the way in which a generation ago, or a couple of generations ago now, the footage of Beatles fans are just like something to be laughed, like a side note to be laughed at, but they are the reason behind that success. And there's something kind of this, it's not a new phenomenon, but it is an expression of that kind of very specific time in all our lives that maybe as a society we don't want to look at, because I don't know, I think that there's something in this work that opens up a part of human life experience, whatnot, that we close a chapter on very quickly because we feel our own discomfort with who we were as teenagers. I also think we're maybe very afraid of teenagers as a species.
Yeah. Because they're so powerful.
Yeah, because it's so it's being human squared or cubed or something like that. It's like this unbridled, all of the emotions all the time. It's just they're so human that it scares us or something. Because I see the way people navigate around teenagers on trains or in public transport, and it's there is fear, and I think there is shame as well. And I think what the work does really well is it kind of it comes from the inside of those eyes and takes away those layers and makes it authentic and real.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Yes, here they come.
Hi, absolutely adore your work. I am a budding actor and writer. I'm just wondering any advice you have for kind of pushing past the self-doubt and just getting it off the ground, getting it happening.
Question rephrase is how, as a budding actor, how do you push past self-doubt and get your work up and on?
Oh, good question. Sonya had a really good tip. Give yourself a scholarship. That's great.
If you can.
I think something I've been thinking about recently is like, I think in my beginning of my career, I was like, oh my God, if this succeeds, imagine, then I'll have done that thing and I'll be that girl. And that does not sustain you. And now why I do things and that I think that was kind of, I was through that by the time I started writing Fangirls, but now I get excited. It's like, if I finish this musical, think of all the people I'll get to meet. I'll get to meet the person who plays Salty Pringle. I'll get to meet an amazing director. I'll get to meet an amazing lighting designer. And just the idea that if you keep going on things, you bring amazing people into your life. It's magic. And then also like you get to give something to audiences, and then you get to meet them. And so I try and think of it through that framework. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but like, yeah.
I think that's super. Why I would like to echo that that the journey is the destination stuff that you're talking about, because I think when I remember back to Baby Sonya, the idea of like getting stuff up and on as a step towards like made my career feel external to me. Like my career was maybe something out here that if I'd taken up steps, I would I would achieve it. And being a 40-something-year-old now, and what I hear when I hear you say that is, for me, my career is right here in my solar plexus, and I walk around with it. Like, I can't be external to me because I am in the driver's seat of it. But it took me a long while to get there to that idea. And I don't think you can shortcut that. But thinking about the process and who you get to meet and collaborating and all of that is...
Yeah, and just be really kind along the way, right? Please and thank you. Just, like, take care of people because it's all you have. Like, no one comes into this industry to get rich, so you just have to be nice to your homies.
You had a question up the back here.
Yeah, kind of jumping off of that. Also, you're amazing. But did you ever have like a point where you were like, if I don't achieve this level of success, I won't be happy? Because I know you said like, maybe I'll just quit this all and have a desk job. Did you kind of think, oh, if I go down that path, I'm never going to be happy? Or did you think like, no, I need to pursue this musical and it needs to be hugely successful.
Well,
Yeah, so the question is about how you tied happiness to your decisions around whether you stayed in the industry or left, and where you came to with that.
Well, it's an interesting question because when I got the scholarship, it's just me, right? And there was no pressure, so I just had fun. But then, as soon as I brought my collaborators on board, I wanted and needed it to succeed. I feel like I'm gonna burp. Cute if I do. But I felt that I needed to keep going for them, for ABBA, right? So, you know, that was part of my motivation because we had this one thing where Belvoir wanted to do the show, and so my manager was like, don't take a meeting, tell them to like take the meeting in their rehearsal room and say you need it for 3 hours before and just show them as much of the show as you can. So it was like this deranged 2-hour pitch of me on my own, basically reading and singing most of the show. And like that is so extra. But the reason that I did that, going into that room, I wasn't just like, well, I hope Belvoir pick my show. It was like, they have to pick it because Alice has done so much work, Dave has done so much work, Johnny's a genius, and if they don't pick my family, then they're insane. And so you like it was more of a mama bear mentality of like, I'm doing this for the gang. So I think that's what shifted for me, and it felt like we were in a band. Whereas my career before that was one-woman shows, and that I had to totally survive on self-motivation, and I tired of that really quickly. So I think people will really help you with that, having people you believe in and are inspired by.
That's a great answer. More questions? Oh yes, here we go.
What was it like seeing Karis play Edna for the first time? So I know you were talking about once you were out of the show and weren't playing main characters, a lot more visualization of it. So what was that like for you, and like the audition process and everything?
What was it like seeing Karis play your role that you originated for the first time?
Let's have a picture of Karis. She's the best. Where is she? Where is she? She is the best. It was so special because you write this character in your head, and performing that role was really special, but it felt like there was something about it that was unsatisfying. You know, I wanted to see Edna, and then watching Karis take on this role was amazing, and Karis just added all this stuff that I never thought of. And you know, she would text me and she's like, what's her star sign? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what is her star sign? She's like, okay, I figured it out. And that was amazing, and getting to, it just was the best feeling. You know, like maybe 2 or 3 people this year have said to me like, are you jealous? I'm like, no! We've all seen the show. I don't want to jump out of a bin every night. I did that. No, it's the most profound thing about this. Like, even when I would get off stage and I'd be really injured and tired and half high on steroids, and people would say, how do you feel? And I'd be like, I found that my survival technique was to go, isn't the cast great? Because I would never get sick of hearing people be like, yes, oh my God, chica. Like, that was my survival technique, and I think that's how I found I didn't want to be on stage. I just wanted to watch everyone. So when we found Karis, I was like, oh my God, yes. That's my answer.
Did you, just to piggyback on that, was it your idea that you, like, or did other people kind of talk you into taking on the role?
It's kind of complex because whenever I was pitching it in these showcases, like I had this pic before of me and I'm pitching it and it's like just me at a mic stand because, you know, I couldn't afford to pay people. And so it's just me standing up being like, hey, everyone care about this. And like, I won't make it full screen. And so I think people were like, oh, well, you would therefore play the lead. And the precedent, of course, is like Lin-Manuel Miranda being in Hamilton or In the Heights. Or at the time, Phoebe Waller-Bridge was having her big moment. And so, you know, you couldn't argue with people being like, it's such a great marketing story, like it's such a sell. And for sure, I was a fetus, like why else would people come to my show? I needed every bit of help I could get. So I didn't ever question people being like, and of course you should be in it. I was like, sure. But then as it got nearer and nearer, I definitely felt this guilt of like, I don't have training to back this up. I don't know that I should feel more excited. So yeah, which is why I ultimately just didn't want to continue. But I am pleased that I did it once because I got to understand, I could to stand where Karis now stands and like see how hard it was and understand that if you say, oh, it opens and she jumps out of a bin, like someone has to do that to their body every night. And that actually is like Do you know what I mean? I had to really think about what I had to ask people to do. So yeah.
So you had to learn through doing it.
Yes,
You came out the other
and
side
the
of it.
respect that I have now. Oh my God, when they were rehearsing in Sydney this year, I was just bringing them snacks all the time. I bought Karis a water bottle because I was like, you never get to go off stage, you need to hydrate. Like, yeah, it was hectic.
We had a couple more questions, one here, one here. Yeah.
How have you felt about like the response to the show? Because like I've seen online, there's like a fan base of fangirls, and like people have created their own works, like art and stuff like that. How have you felt about that?
How do you feel about fangirls of fangirls and that spinning off into a whole new kind of pool of people creating their own art and following you?
I'm obsessed with it. I'm so obsessed with it. All the time I go on Twitter and there's the funniest memes about the show. And I just can't even believe it's like, I can't believe they want to sit with me. You know what I mean? I just think they're the funniest people. And I think what's really cool is I was recording this podcast last night and they said, well, sometimes fandoms can become really toxic, competitive places. Why do you think that's not what's going on with the fandom around Fangirls? And I was like, well, because the show isn't about that. Like, the show is about, in the show, there's this character, Salty Pringle, who's like our protagonist's online best friend. And Salty Pringle just wants the best for the world. Like, they're deep into fanfic and conspiracies, but they just want everyone to be taken care of. And what I am really moved by is that when I go online, like, everyone's a Salty Pringle. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh, don't, I'll cry. Yeah, that's my answer.
You created a beautiful world.
They did. Do you know what I mean? Like, I created a musical and then they took that and then, like, they're so industrious and inspiring.
Sure. But I feel like, and you can only ever bring yourself to art. So, yes, that is of them. But they've obviously responded to something that's really deeply embedded in the work. And that's what's being mirrored and echoed outward as well, I would argue.
But yes, and like, but they're responding to what James and Karis and Paige and everyone brought. So I feel like they're responding to what my band made. You know?
Not just what came out of your asshole. Yes. I said don't swear. Sorry.
Asshole isn't a swear word.
Is it? Okay, good.
It's a body part.
Yeah. Yes, we have a question up here.
Hi, I've got a couple of questions if that's not totally illegal.
Go.
So you mentioned that you had an agent and then you got in front of BBC, but you said at that point you were kind of unproven. So how did you manage that? How did you pull that off? How did you get in front of the BBC with an agent? And also, another question is, in regards to the story, I'm a writer myself, trying to get something up, and I'm struggling with the different ways that I can approach telling the story and what actual story it is. Did you go through many different drafts and ways to tell the story so that you could avoid the on the nose, the tacky, all of that?
Should we go with the second question first, which is like, how did you approach writing the story? Were there numerous versions of this? Which was a question, which was one of my quite practical questions, was like a version of this question is, what does writing look like to you? I have this lovely friend who's a writer who writes very well about being a writer, Fleur Kilpatrick, and she talks about writing. Sometimes it looks like writing, and sometimes it looks like thinking, and sometimes it looks like taking a shower. And so, my question was going to be, what does writing look like to you? Which leads on to, I suppose, the many iterations of this particular piece of work.
Yeah, okay. So this is me in 2016 figuring out the structure for a song that became Feel So True. And like, before I write a draft, for me, I write everything in dot point form. So this is what I want to happen in each verse and chorus and the information that I want to happen before I even write the lyrics. And I have a whole first draft of Fangirls that is just dot points. It's like, we go to the school scene, we have to learn that Jules is obsessed with this, Brown is obsessed with this, Edna wants this. And then, so then I can read through all of it and I go, oh, but where does that piece of information go? And that's just me. I really like spreadsheets too. So other ways that this looked, this is more things. So this is worship, which became justice. And this is me. It's got lots of different ideas in it of how it's going to flow through. This is a improv that I did. I paid my friend who's a professional improviser, and I don't know if you can see, but he's tied up. And that is me with bleach blonde hair next to him, trying to figure out what would happen in that moment in the show. And because I was trying to write it and I was hitting my head against a wall. I was like, oh, spoiler alert, but like, what do you do when you've kidnapped someone? What do you say? So I paid him to be tied up. This is me and Johnny, the dramaturg. We're meeting in a cafe in Sydney and we're trying to figure out different beats that are going to happen in Act 2. This is another version where we had pieces of paper on a table and the coloured post-its relate to themes and characters. So we are tracking where things happen across the show. This is a spreadsheet that I made to figure out the songs and mini sings. Oh my God, my manager's clapping.
We have claps for
love
spreadsheets.
This is me figuring out songs, but then down here I'm like, where are they up to? Like, how developed are they? There was another version of this that had a column for scenes. Like, this all looks like I have a system. Every one of these is me throwing paint at the wall, being like, does this work? Yeah, but you just keep. I would just, be experimental. Bits of paper on the floor are always good. And I really always recommend dinner table readings. Just get your friends to read it and tell them they're not allowed to tell you what they think at the end unless it's nice.
And the second part B of the question was about, or the second question was about having an agent and going in and pitching at the BBC. So how did you wrangle that? Was that the question?
I was doing one-woman shows in London, so I was sort of pseudo being seen sometimes as like a semi-comedian for that reason. And I did a one-woman show. She invited someone from the BBC who she knew was always looking for new writers. And after that, he's like, I'll take a half-hour meeting with her. Can she pitch concepts like this? You know what I mean? It was very low stakes. But then I came in and I was like, we open on, anyway.
Do we have, something here?
I was just wondering if you have a favourite musical theme that you wrote within the show, or like a line that you're proudest of writing.
Oh, this is a good one. Do you have a, can I tag on to the end of your question? Oh, that's very kind. Do you have a favourite musical theme in the show? And maybe can we hear some themes that maybe didn't make it into the show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I am completed to hear someone ask me, do you have like a favourite detail? Because if you've heard the score, it's 23 songs, but I've braided stuff through it and like there's little Easter eggs and things I call back to, so thank you, that's truly therapy for me. Well, I really like, there's a line that the violins do every time that there's like, it's about Edna and Harry and their destiny together. I call them the destiny strings, and they're the ones that go dun 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 dun. Anyway, I just really like them. I really like, one of my favourite moments is the bridge in Feel So. I actually have a little slide that has that. I will play the graveyard of, how are we doing for time, by the way?
I have no idea.
Are we so naughty?
We could be here. This could be
No
the end
one's
of days. I'm not sure.
But like the bridge in Feel So True. Feel So True is a song where they're thrilling to like what fan fiction gives them, and it's just supposed to be this moment where. So this is my first draft, and I'll speak the lyrics, and it's like. Says on me, I'm scared to be. There's words I'll never say out loud. But I'm with you. Anything is allowed. Anyway, so I wanted it to feel like this moment where it's like a heartbeat, but it also feels like you're like swimming in something and it's gooey and like just vulnerable. So that was my draft, and then it just became this beautiful moment, and you can now hear what Dave and Alice added.
I never say out loud, but when I'm with you, anything is allowed. Because you switch off the bitches, you wipe their words away. Deleted, I can feel it, I finally feel okay. Magnificent thing, always misunderstood.
Just a moment that I really like. It's just about being a teenager, loving what you love, and when people don't. That's one of my favourite moments. That's one of my answers. Thank you.
And now for the ones that didn't quite make it through.
Oh, okay. Well, now you've all seen the show. Let's go. I made this slide, Graveyard of Dead Ideas. Okay, I plugged in my old hard drive last night and I found stuff. I was like, no, I can't believe it. We had this dream ballet moment. If you don't know what that is, it's like, how do we describe it? A moment in old school musicals where someone has a dream.
I mean,
Right?
isn't the logic of it is, I mean, I don't know, like this is
Please,
this is
you're
how I
actually
understood it. When characters in musical theatre, they can't express themselves as words, they have to sing, and when they cannot express themselves through song, they must dance.
Yes, that.
Like, and so, like, there's a Somewhere ballet in West Side Story, or in Oklahoma, she has the dream ballet where she imagines her future. Laurie, this is in Oklahoma. I don't hate all musicals. Off you go.
Okay, so very that. I cannot remember how this fit into the plot, but our protagonist is having a dream where she goes on the run with her love, Harry, the pop star, and it starts really beautiful. I think he like climbs in through her window or something, and she's like, no. Like, it's like, and the point is that the audience is supposed to watch it, and it's supposed to be sacred, and this is like, are you serious? Like, but anyway, they fall in love and go on the run, and there's like a montage, and you see them on the run, and then like they're having a beautiful time or something, and then suddenly she realizes that they are surrounded by fans who are coming for her, and they end up in her dream tearing her arms off. So it starts here, right? It's pretty. Can we crank it a little louder? Right? Okay, it's about to get really saccharine. This is the longest one I'll play, but it's so funny to me. So you're watching it, and if you're like a middle-aged man, you're like, what the hell is this show? As if. But then she realizes this one girl is watching them, but the girl would be standing in the audience like and then lights up are like so many of them, and they're all like coming down the aisles towards them, and she's like, no, they're coming. They're coming. Okay.
Don't hate it.
Thank you. Anyway, when this got cut, but just wait for it. It takes a second, but it gets to. You guys look forward to. It gets. This is them tearing her arms off. Wait for it. This screams. Yeah, we worked hard on this. Anyway, so that was cut.
This is a moment for that. For the Dream Ballet.
Oh my God, the Dream Ballet finally gets its applause. Yeah. Wait and See, which is her Big I Want song, there are 9 full drafts of that. This is what the first version sounded like. It's just the backing, but just like, what in the Kelly Clarkson was this? Where is it? Is it gonna play? Wait, I'll sing the chorus. So this is before I understood the importance of like hooky choruses, and I just put like 800 words in every chorus, and I now understand that people need to be able to like get it. Where is it? There'll be like a little. Oh no, I think. No, this is still verse 1. This is the thing. Verse 1 for this song used to be 2 minutes long, so you know it's a first draft when the first verse is 2 minutes long. Yeah, it's very guitar-y. What is it? Yeah, it's coming up. It's just in her eyes, it's a wicked lie, more like a bitchy fire. 'Cause if you're always the liar, then that means she is always right. That's a big lead up. Go on and tell me I'm wrong. Tell me what you think you know about me. Maybe I'm more than my mistakes, so just you wait and see. I'm not doomed. I'm just incomplete. I'm not done becoming who I'm gonna be. But just you wait and see. Anyway, it was that. It was very good. No, thank you. I mean, I think that's also me growing up on like Legally Blonde and like rock kind of musicals, which I now, and then I was like, no, but what would a new musical sound like if it was my version of contemporary music? And maybe the people who write rock musicals grew up on rock, but I was like, no, it has to, which, speaking of which, I'm so devo that we cut this, because I heard this last night and I was like, this is a full bop, but this is from, to make the song Panic, where all the fans are distressed, I needed to like really slap, and so I was like, Dave, music producer, can you just go wild and give me some versions of this moment that sample other parts of the show? And he made this one, which is amazing. And like these screams come in. I think we cut it because it was like too fun. And it wasn't like this angry enough or something. But like, yeah, so like a lot of things didn't make it.
And I mean, like, that's the Kill Your Darlings thing, right? Like, there are shadows of these moments that survive in the work. Was there one that was, like, I mean, is there anything that was the hardest one to, or did you describe the hardest one was to translate the In the Woods?
Yeah, we used to have So Wait and See used to be about a very different story, which is that our protagonist is a serial liar and her friends find her out in a lie. And her bridge was all about how, like, it doesn't matter if they don't like me because I figured out that I'm supposed to be with Harry, but it was very cosmic, her, like, maths of, like, there were twin souls who were meant to be together. And I just remember being so pleased with myself and my rhymes. It was like, it's more than teenage fantasy. I'm more than just your fan. You see something in your words as a fan of me. And it just kept on, it was like the lyrics that I was like, this is the best stuff. But it was very repetitive and went for a long time. And yeah, I still wonder if we have too many songs in the first act. So like, it was important. It was important to cut it. And because we need to get on with the action. So yeah.
I think we've got like about maybe 4 or 5 minutes left,
Oh,
if
sorry.
that's true. I don't know. I think it's true, so let's be true. Would you like to maybe we have 2 more questions. Would you like to be one of those?
So you mentioned earlier that there potentially could be like a UK production in the future. How does that happen? Like with the success we've had in Australia, like do you just find like a UK production company, or like what's the next steps for that?
How does this work tour to the UK? How does that happen?
I think that's a great question. And it's really interesting as well, being in the times that we're in. All I know is that a video of like the production that toured in 2019 and then 2021, like a professionally filmed archive of that, a little bit, was sent by so I have a UK agent and I have an Australian agent too, or manager. And so my UK agent sent it out to a bunch of like West End style producers, like commercial producers. And I guess because of that and the buzz, like there's been a lot of interest, which is great. And then we're now at the stage of talking to people, figuring out who might be the right match. But I mean, even if, we do find someone, they go, yeah, I want to make it in the UK. Like, when are we going to be able to get on a plane, right? So I have no idea what happens next. And the amount of money that it costs to put something on in the UK is extraordinary. And things can fall over at any stage. But yeah, that's all I know so far.
So it's like a conversation that's happening with managers and production houses, and you just keep abreast of it.
Yep, I just cross my fingers and, expect nothing.
Hope for the best, expect the worst. Anybody else had a last question? Okay, here we go, right at the front.
It's kind of been talked about before, but like, how do you get over the fear of like showing your art to people or like performing?
How do you get over the fear of showing yourself to people and performing?
Yes. You just have to put yourself in listen, the first draft of everything in this show was terrible. But I think the only way that I got to move forward was by, meeting people and you just start with one person at a time. So, it was just Amy, my mentor at A2IP, and then it was just Johnny, who I'd known for a long time. And then it was Dave, who I didn't know, but I needed to show him demos if he was going to come on board, and you just get yourself more used to it. But people won't judge you like you think that they will. And there's a lot of my friends who've come over to early dinner table readings of Fangirls when it made no sense. And I was clear with them. I was like, I don't want you to tell me what's wrong or how to fix it. I just want you to tell me what you, just encourage me. Like, what can you encourage? And, people will actually go off. They'll be like, good on you for finishing a thing, So just go for it.
Yeah, being vulnerable. The question is really about how you be vulnerable, and I think that's it's a complex question, but a really important one in the collaborative arts, because we cannot make anything unless we are vulnerable. And just to tag on to the end of what you said, I think is like, what's really lovely about this story is the idea of maybe not attaching end goals to everything. Like, this is only a success if someone picks it up immediately and it goes on to and if they don't do that, then the idea is rubbish. There's a twinning of the ideas of hope and fear, right? Like, if you really attach value to an outcome, to something, if you hope for something, then you can fear the negative. And I think that there's a nice twinning of the idea of hopelessness in the sense of not in despair, but just not attaching a consequence or an outcome to something. If you just kind of like, I'm going to put this into space and see what comes from it. The twinning is confidence, actually. That kind of like, that's that Buddhist attachment stuff. But it took me a long time to learn it. But that if you can be vulnerable with no string, like what you tell me is the be all and end all, then that builds your confidence to take a risk, I guess.
Sonia's so wise. Can we do this again, but I ask you questions?
Yeah, totally. We'll do the therapy session. Like I think my practice is like half therapy, sort of like things I have learned along the way. We had a mini question just behind. Maybe that can be the super last one, right?
Sort of two questions.
Sorry. Stuffed it.
Do you have a favourite song from the show? If so, which one and why? And what can we expect from Fangirls in the future?
Oh, that's a nice one to end on. So maybe, favourite song and what can we expect in the future from Fangirls?
Favourite song this week is The Woods, 'cause silly. What can we expect in the future? Well, I mean, we'll try and go to the UK. We'll try come back here. I don't know. A screen version would be really cool. Working on that.
That's back on the table, maybe.
Yeah, well, it was in development with a really brilliant company in the UK, and then I decided to go a different way. So now we're talking to Australian companies because I really wanted to tell the story here. So I don't know now. I've got offers, and we'll see. But like, it was really intense actually looking through this old stuff last night and realizing it's taken 5 years to get here, and it could take 5 more to get to the end. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of excited by that too. Like watching the show this year, there's so much I wanted to rewrite. There's so much I'd like to tighten and change, and I kind of want to make the characters a little bit more politically aware because I think teenagers are now in this very inspirational way. So I guess the future of Fangirls is more of this. Yeah.
The story continues. Yeah. I'd like to invite everyone to put your hands together and thank Yve Blake for being here with us today.
And Sonya, legend.
And thank you Arts Centre Melbourne for hosting. We've had a ball.